Welcome back. Let's explore a lead capture page, or 3 lead capture pages to be exact. Now, the purpose of a lead capture page is to get the visitor to request content or initiate contact. Once again, to request content like an ebook or some type of course or product or something they can learn about, or initiate contact with a brand. Let's switch over to my browser and we'll see some real examples of lead capture pages. Now, this one you've seen before earlier in the course, and this is the Facebook ad template library from Digital Marketer. If you're not familiar with Digital Marketer, they are an online marketing training company. They want to train marketers and business folks and their teams on how to do really good digital marketing. And I must say, it's a really good resource. I've learned a lot from them over the years, and they have some really great conventions, including the Traffic and Conversion Summit that is in San Diego every year that I've been to a couple times. And so, yeah, if you're planning on attending a Traffic and Conversion Summit, you will certainly be in for a treat. So this is Digital Marketer. They're basically trying to generate some leads by giving away an ad template library. And this is an older page. I've seen this page for a while, and it's an older format that you've probably seen a lot if you've been in the marketing space for a while, or you've been familiar with these types of lead generation pages. It's a very standard format where you have the headline, you have the logo of the brand, you have some type of visual here on the left or the right, you have a very simple form, then you have some bullet points down here with some more information about what you're getting. Maybe you have either a call to action section or a testimonial or some trust logos. In this case, they have a quote from the co-founder and CEO of Digital Marketer. So while it's not a testimonial, it certainly adds some social proof and some credibility because a lot of people know the co-founder or they've heard of him. And then you have this repeated call to action down at the bottom. So it's very simple. It is a very traditional landing page in the sense that there's no navigation, no external links that are not absolutely necessary, like the privacy policy or terms. So it's simple, it's to the point, and I think it does a good job, and it must be because I keep seeing these types of pages come out from Digital Marketer for all different types of assets, and the design has been tweaked here and there, but overall the layout seems to be pretty consistent, so it must be working for them. So yeah, I think if I were to add anything, it would be some trust icons, because you notice there's really no trust icons, and you want to have something that answers the trust question. So I think with a brand like Digital Marketer, that they have a lot of credibility behind the brand. They've worked with a lot of big companies over the years to help train their teams, so it would be easy for them to add some trust icons. And then something else that might be really good to test for a page like this is a video. So instead of just having this image here, maybe you could have the image down here so you can still see what you're getting, but maybe have a video that just quickly explains what the Facebook ad template library is. Because I must say, even as a marketer who's run a lot of Facebook ads over the years, when I first visited this page, I wasn't 100% sure what the Facebook ad template library was going to offer. So I think something that explains it quickly would certainly be helpful, because when you hear library, you don't immediately think of like an ebook, but this image makes it look like it's an ebook. So I think that was maybe a point of confusion that I had that maybe some others have as well. The other thing is, as we look on mobile, remember back earlier in the course, I mentioned that it's always a good idea to try to get your call to action button above the fold or above this first screenful, especially on mobile, because when people see the page, you want them to be able to see what the action is that they need to take. And so in this case, because of the form, you can't see that button until you scroll down. So what I would recommend for them is to test a two-step form where instead of have the form fields visible, you can just have the button visible. So imagine if it's just the button here without the form, and when they click on it, it would open up a light box, and the light box would contain the form. So that would be a two-step opt-in that we've talked about previously in the course, but I think that would help them use this first screenful, especially on mobile, much more effectively. And of course, it's something to test, because in some cases it works better if you have the form visible, but in other cases it doesn't. And there's a lot of psychology that goes into this. There's a principle known as the Zeigarnik effect, which basically says if we can get someone to start an action, it's easier to get them to complete that action. So it's easier for you to just click a button and then see the form and then start filling it out, rather than if you see the form from the start and then you start making these decisions like, I don't know if I want to give my first name and my last name and my email and my company name, and you start sort of talking yourself out of it because there's so much work involved and you hadn't even started filling out the form at that point. So it's an easy way to just talk yourself out of it. But if you saw the button and you clicked on the button that said get your free ad templates, and then you see the form, you've already started that process. So that would be something to test. The other thing I would maybe clean up is this section here, which has a lot of some very fine copy, especially on mobile. You see how it takes up the entire screen full. So I would maybe cut this down. I would use some bold text, maybe some underlined text to really call out the most important key phrases here, because very seldom are people going to read this whole wall of text here. So I think that can certainly be reduced. And then what about testimonials? I see they have this quote from Ryan Deiss, the co-founder, but I think some testimonials that really talk about how people are getting value out of this Facebook ad template library would be super, super helpful. The last thing I'm going to mention about it is, do they really need to collect first name, last name, email, and company name? That's always a question you have to ask yourself. Do you absolutely positively need all of these form fields? Because almost across the board, whenever you have more form fields, it's going to reduce the number of conversions because it creates friction and it creates more complexity, and it makes it a more difficult decision for someone to make when they're deciding if they're going to take action or not. So if you don't absolutely need it, maybe take it out. There are some arguments to be made to keep it in, because it may increase the lead quality if you keep this information in, because only the most diehard visitors are going to convert. And maybe someone who's not part of a company or not working for a company, maybe this will prohibit them from filling out the form. And maybe that's a good thing, because they wouldn't be in the target audience anyways. But anyways, it's just something you want to think about as you create your forms. So that's going to wrap it up for this page in the lead capture section. We still have 2 more lead capture pages to look at, so let's move on to the next one right now. Okay, we're back with the second lead capture page, and this one is from a very popular company called Mindvalley, and they do a lot of training and a lot of paid courses that they promote. And they have a very standard process from what I've seen, where you'll see a page like this, which offers like a free course, and then you take that course and then you get put into their series of emails and upsells and offers, where ultimately you have the opportunity to join a paid course or to buy some type of product, like an info product. So it's a really effective system that's worked for many, many companies. So anyways, this one is a course on uncovering the 4 secrets to being a powerful communicator. So it's really cool because it adds that mystery of, what are the 4 secrets? That's what you're going to think about when you first see that. Like, I want to know the 4 secrets, right? I don't just want to become a powerful communicator. I want to know the 4 secrets, because then you'll know something that might give you an advantage or an edge. And so that's a really good headline, because they are adding that unique approach to it and sort of opening that loop in your mind. Then they have this interesting subhead. I don't know if you can still call it a subhead because it's above the headline. I'm sure there's probably a better term for it. But anyways, above the main headline, it says, experience a riveting masterclass with one of the world's greatest speakers. So you got some qualification going on here, one of the world's greatest speakers. Now, whenever you see statements like this, it's always a good idea to try to prove it somewhere on the page, because people are very skeptical and very critical. And so when they see this, they might look at that and say, well, who says she's one of the world's greatest speakers? I'm not saying she's not. I'm just saying people might think that, no matter who it is. If I was on the page, if Gary Vaynerchuk was on the page, people are going to have that question. So whenever you have these grand claims, you want to try to back it up somewhere by data. Like you could say, Lisa has been, she's spoken in front of hundreds of thousands of people, or she's given 100 keynote speeches, or something that qualifies that distinction. So I think that's a really important takeaway here. The other thing is, for this page, I'm not sure why they have social sharing links so prominent on the page, because it's got to be taken away from the call to action, because I know it's sort of annoying when I'm looking at it, especially on mobile. It takes up this entire bottom of the page. I would much rather this be like a persistent call to action than to have these social links. To me, it just looks kind of amateur when you see this, especially because they're different on mobile. But maybe that's working. Maybe they're getting so many social shares that it makes up for the few lost conversions that they're getting as people get distracted in the social media rabbit hole. But anyways, as we scroll down, the other cool thing to point out is the big difference between mobile and desktop. And this is a very common thing that we're starting to see a lot of, is that the design is almost entirely different on mobile than it is on desktop, for a number of reasons. Just because you have such a smaller screen here. You have about 320 pixels wide that you're working with here on mobile, and so you're limited in what you can do. So imagine if they tried to get this photo of Lisa to work with all this text on mobile. It would create a very cramped and crowded experience. Now, that's not to say this is a great mobile design. I would say there's a lot that can be done to improve it, because when you look at it, what's your first impression? My first impression of the mobile page is, wow, that's a lot of text. I'm not going to read all that. And I have no idea what the call to action is. All I see is these social links and a wall of text. So I would cut this paragraph out by a lot. I would cut it way down so that I could try to get this call to action button somewhere above the fold. And again, it can just be a button that then jumps down to this form. But I think, right now there's just too much text going on there. But anyways, the copy itself is pretty compelling if you take the time to read it. And this is where a lot of the session recording data can come in handy from a tool like Hotjar, because what good is it to have all this text if nobody's reading it? So you want to make sure that people are actually sticking around and reading the copy. So you could run the session recording data and play back the videos and see, are people just coming to the page and scrolling right away, or are they taking the time to really read this paragraph in particular? So then it says down here, now playing. So this masterclass is absolutely free and plays in your local time. Choose your preferred session below. So that's pretty cool. You can choose a different time. It's a pretty common tactic to have these sort of on-demand webinars here. I like the call to action because it says reserve my spot now, which creates some implied urgency and scarcity, because if there's a spot and it's my spot, well, maybe my spot won't be there if I don't reserve it right now. So it creates that sense of urgency, which is nice. I like that it gives the time commitment here, because I've seen so many of these webinar pages that just don't have any type of expectation of how long it is, and it's just they expect you to just sign up and sit around for 4 hours. So it's good to see that there. They have this YouTube video. My only recommendation here would be, I wouldn't use YouTube on this type of landing page if I'm sending a lot of traffic to it, because if people click through and then they go to the YouTube, they might get distracted and not come back. And it might not seem like a big deal, but I've seen it really affect conversion rates pretty dramatically. So that's why there's really dedicated video tools like Wistia and Vimeo Pro that work really well to help clean up the video experience and keep people on the page, because then they're not going to get pulled into the YouTube rabbit hole. So then as we scroll down, we have a lot of text here, but you see how they've had this very efficient use of bold text, so you can just skim the main points. They have these images here. They're building some social proof with the images by having some celebrities here. So I think they did a really good job with this. And this is a really important section. It's an about section about the speaker, because if you're going to spend 80 minutes with someone in their course, then you want to know more about them. So I think this adds a really nice touch to the page, especially with the signature and the trust logos down here. And then of course you need to have some testimonials. And so here you have some very high profile testimonials here. Very well done. Everyone's smiling, happy. It looks like a authentic wall of testimonials. If anything, I think there's just maybe too many, because there's so many here. What, you have 8 testimonials, and all of them are pretty lengthy. I would maybe cut this down and just have 4 or just have shorter testimonials, but it's great to see them. And then the call to action is repeated down here at the bottom. So very simple, very straightforward. Overall, this must be doing very well because I see these types of pages from Mindvalley pretty often, and I can see why, because it's a well-designed page. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this one, and let's switch over to the third and final lead capture page that we'll look at. Okay, here we are at the third and final lead capture page. I wanted to try to find a local services page, so I went on Google and searched for roofing contractor. And so this is a local page from my area here in Florida. And so I am not affiliated with them. I've never heard of this company before, but I wanted to try a real example because a lot of the pages we were looking at were nationwide or worldwide companies that have a huge marketing budget. So I wanted to find something that's much more small scale. And something in the professional services business, because that's where a lot of lead generation pages are really, really common. So anyways, this is for a roofing company called D'Agostino Roofing, I think. And as you can see here, the call to action is to request roof estimate. And so first impressions, well, where do I start? There's a lot going on this page. And so I think that's the first thing that I would change is I would reduce. There's so much above the fold here. And when I looked at it on mobile, it's on my actual phone, it loads on mobile. Here it's not loading, it's just loading the desktop version. But as you can imagine, the mobile version is quite cluttered as well. So again, here we're seeing the same issue we saw with Mindvalley. They have these social links. They probably don't need to be there. I would remove them. Then you have all these links here at the top. And again, this is because this is being used as their homepage, and it's also being used on Google as a landing page for their ad campaigns. And so I would remove these links if I was to use this on Google as a dedicated landing page campaign. You have this contact information here at the top, which doesn't really seem like it's something you would need at the top of the page, like their address and the contractor number, unless that's absolutely required for some reason to be this far up the page, but I doubt it. But that's information you could probably have further down below. Then you have all these social media links you really don't need. When it comes to photos, they're very, very small. And then you have this wall of text here that I can almost guarantee you nobody's going to read in detail. You have these scrolling images that move pretty quickly, which isn't ideal because it doesn't give people enough time to take in what each picture represents. And then you have all these different calls to action. You have the phone number, which I don't believe is a click-to-call number on mobile. I could be wrong about that, but on desktop, it's certainly not a click-to-call. But that's another really important thing to point out is on mobile, make sure your phone numbers are click-to-call. You can do this very easily by adding a certain type of HTML link called a tel link. It's TEL, and then a colon, and then the phone number. If you search for click-to-call HTML code on Google, you'll find some helpful instructions on how to do it. But it's very important that whenever you have a phone number displayed on a mobile landing page, that it's click-to-call, because people do not want to have any difficulty calling a business from a mobile device. They expect to just click that number and call. So what happens when we click on this request roof estimate? Oh, it takes us to this form. So it takes us to a separate page, a contact page, and it says, please fill in the fields below to request a free estimate. It doesn't tell me what's going to happen after I fill out this form. And so this is really important. You want to make sure people know what's the next step. After I fill out the form, who's going to contact me? How are they going to contact me? When are they going to contact me? What are they going to do? All of that information. Are they just going to show up at my house? So you need to be careful with these types of forms to clearly define what's going to happen. Then you have this Google Maps section that doesn't even work. Again, going back to usability testing and functional testing. Just make sure your page actually works before you go live, especially if you're going to be using it for a Google Ads campaign. And just the overall polish of this page, I think, can certainly be improved. And for something as expensive as a new roof or roof repairs, you would expect to see a very professional page, because you could be theoretically you could be spending a lot of money with this company or similar companies. So I wouldn't say it's the worst page I've ever seen. I've seen a lot worse, but there's certainly some things that can be improved and definitely optimized on the page. Well, that does it for lead capture pages. And last but not least, we're going to look at sales pages in the next video. So I'll see you there.